but nano, Jidistan Tigwik, Jibet, Gnobum Gwik, Nest, Jibet Witabum Gwik. I'm going to put that the Tikia and go quetch mo. Say, I go to quetch manot. Do you quetch mamugaya Margaret? Did you gay bomb shagai chick when she should this afternoon? I get to then now. Margaret Chizu. You can do it to my it's Mike.
Das sehr nibok niboda. Das was gejish kabik. Thank you, Jesus, for this day, for this beautiful day that you've given us. Jishka nas kumdan. Jesus, bejuichinan, keu henjish, ish tuinano, zini gans batsundan. Kuisk sejish, knat mato hedzagon, ke sejish, mam nitum higat, zim sedzagon siustan, jisiustan o he, stigadat. You created everything that we see. Everything is beautiful in your eyes. Genyange matsionan. Geotebetukshinyat. Bedstantinan sedgon. Sedgon dan waitiat. Naskum danak zatsankason. Naskum dan jishgad. Ishmionakutain. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day. In Jesus' name, amen.
May God, Margaret Chisdo. Jito them attack at Sheshukutska, you quit him done. Then what Gemma went, but no Egypt took Shniak and she should. Did you check who took on the aim where he went? We were down Stinas to go. School he did know to go to eat tea with the ma Nishtem, opening with the ma. Nishtum zagon mesnade dot to dunk augo did you we hagwen did you would knife did you pstek did you buita do you change to an eating chishka did you shigai a hack jishi tikwen mean could take to knife when augo Jameson he said, yeah, Jameson heck, and said, the one day she am where he went, Jishuga Jishigat. So nish to go to get nano, Bomshaga, Chik, Unchish, then Stuikia. Gapistana again, Chish, Jiji. We had when we had it, Ogo, Zebumbitat, we use Stuik. Jishigat, Gajishigat. Sashakia a piste jish when we had the way. We had the way when second day taxu when we chat new. Kak Jago Gajungubadma. A kak Agamin da Don Jitkia and Skumudegia, Kakaga da Don Jitmin when we had no do Augiban Whabouchi Jishigai. So actually, Jish a pitch there the Jewy heat when that day when we hit the Bita day. We're appointing a presiding officer who will preside over this meeting today. following that appointment, we will appoint a recording secretary. Oliver Jolly. Oliver Jolly, we have Teddy Whabouchi. Though when we chat, William Chisel, we chat. I want to make sure that I have all these nominations are out of the way first, before I ask the persons that are nominated whether they will accept or not. Are there any other nominations? Jacob Jolly. Wijbetan Mina. Albert, do we have Albert? Do we have? Oh, Twitch, okay. I gotta get any share which here. I check Albert. Bomshaka question Teddy. I mean when we had way. Teddy. Jiwi Higon. Jiji presiding this meeting, over this meeting. We got the secret to go to the big weekend. Thomas Secretary to Whabouchi. So, but she has a question, but she can come and we sham that girl. Since Skumana. All right, Teddy and Skumo. Megach Teddy Ashton. Skumma Teddy agent skummat muy the donation we for besagrichten. So I Teddy giba kumba hashu miao. A kui tga here. Tga go gwechum go a when out neg msin hije simi un chiste pshin. So I'm going to pass the appointment of the recording secretary to our presiding officer, Teddy. Teddy.
Thank you, Chief Whabouchi. Did you permit your stack of ching no? Okay, on silent maybe, so it's don't vibrate. Like that. Ik mean, naskomlige was getting one. Jeg skal get sikker at det man nu skal være Jameson Heck Wednesday night. We had here before we could proceed again as part of the meeting here. We would need a recording secretary. So if there's anyone that wishes to nominate somebody, feel free to do so. Okay, William? Simeon. William Chiso, Simeon, we have. Norman, okay, sorry. Sorry. Norman, Norman, we have William Chiso, Norman Whabouchi, we have as a recording secretary. That when we chat. Oliver, we have William, Norman, and Suna, recording secretary. Okay. Norman Whabouchi, Norman was nominated as a recording secretary, but unfortunately, Norman is not able to agree. So the floor is still open for someone to nominate a recording secretary. The sooner we can have one, the sooner we can proceed with the meeting. Amen. Well, when we had the okay, Margaret. Okay, Margaret Chiso, we have Tanya. That when we chat. Evelyn, okay, Evelyn, Tanya, we chat. Tanya. Tanya, you've been nominated as the recording secretary. You accept your. Tanya. Tanya, do you want to sit up here, or are you okay there? Good day. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this meeting today. No one can need to go into checking out them. Big, the guy when we traded and he was trying to be honest. I go a meeting facilitator. I go our deputy chief Thomas Jolly. I go the Nish Kaitsted. I go a Cree Regional Authority Environment Department, Alan Pan, his Gasha, Kelly LeBlanc, I don't. In this case, the Cree Board of Health and Social Services, Reggie Tomatuk, Public Health Officer, that would say. Much now said Charles Mine, George Awashis, Tallyman for Miss Dasney. I was going to streak who got streak I get do you get my way. Chief Matthew Whabouchi, opening remarks, Stein.
Muy betaxen. Danke behalten Sie. 그래 미래치가 세트너 지쇼 지시가 이집에서 득신이야 아우즈건 지시 지아이 모히вет게 우주 hitmatno 게 بدما 아수시가 왜다지 좀 시간제 hit나노 에고 엔치투이고 우지듯 가면 스납스키제도 데헤스 데헤 나나고 마시고 지신 가동 왠지 어고요 아야 컴퓨터 아야 어고터서 해 녹도 해 세 저건 단이셔 단제 이틱 네스탄나 제시아이 모히고 이크저건 so 먹게 되지 세이트나 모나가 문드비야 야 그때나노 뭔가 고이치는 가심구나 어근 저건 어이면 돈 법스가동 뭐지 아버지가 듣고 어근 제 이티약 이스템 저건 와이트 그 세이트 노아츠기야 애가 약이야 제 베통 구저건 지시 지아이 모히웨 샤스 우다츠네데 우츠마칸 쉿 샤스 지베치 부이타츠엔스 에야이 모히굿 오구요 제고요기야 에카그네스트 가입시 위비아트게안얀 샤스 치체 지치부요 에야이 무타게노트 안웬 가위치부이ታት 안요 안 아시니가 감스코아타게노트게 다베 에이스피츠트 다베 헤이시나크트 네스트 제지토건 구브네기야 에위쿠타게노튼 스니 에우군샤시 지베츠 니치웨츠 우짓 우다츠마칸트 네스트 니앙게 지네 치카이쿠난 나인그데스 게 우데헨치투이ek General Assembly 에이스피트 에그데스 민 지 위트미츠 단나하 비에체 이타드기야 게 니운도 후수기야 아니 니우 베쇼치 간타 쿠쿠이트 오구요 에노 오구요 스니기야 에미코아그누이트 에그니우 네스트 민 지화합 매체 네스트 마시고지 무이무금 세우 지화합 매체 무궁한 샤시 지치부이타체니요 게막 그득it 웬짓 웃냄 스카트게 아다가우치 배슈지게 다 크긋 오그니요 우 단토와 위콰그노도 스니게 그득it 야베치 샤시 지아이무 또모아그노이센스 무가 치시 우 그야근 치시 에시나크트게 마무 무가 знак 스트웬게 제지시 tukshik kago zgon wahit nanot chishi bitma elgo ewi nsuttum haganot msuwen dan how kabeji sweet nest dan how eftukt nest tant pekseitaksik jejish natmazekia tansenduitaksik zeuichtum esku nigande zegon ekhag uunchisten stuik juisitum no suk jegoget stemuek zegon etkunget zegon agansut temek etdumage winsut temek ogu inchish yapishtet unchtajishiga gwesap tajishigat eskop tajishigat egut jenstuik nag yn sto, te apta di sigad yn stuic, agwyd hynt, te bwgseim gwyag ia, te di dwgsiniag, te di psitstmeg, nest, te di gwgwed stemwyag te gon, wa gwgwed stemwyag. Nymwy te gon esg, twy eich den ano, nymwy twy gabwrs den ano, te gon esg. Mwg, sias, I deithagon, te di esgwych gyba, dabe wtstbwychte, dabe te snakt gia, te'n dweim y gwych, te di bytsnym, twy eich dymwn nhw, dabe dan haw, a sigabwstym, awgw, a syni, wa wy kwaganod, wyd nemsgastit, awgwyn zagon gawi, yn sytdym hyd o gydgia, yn tish gadisigad, agwn jeisnag sych, dawd o twenzi y jiwi siamag yn ywyd, jeji dygaste bwyth dado, jeji bed dy badrwm stagwych, dan eich, dan gaisym sgwa dado, dan esit seit go, hw, syni, wa wy kwaganod gia, dan haw, jejish, mam dyneidim, dan haw, jejish iagomik, nest, tygoio, tybaji wasibeidim higonano gia, esgwynde nistamt gia. Tygydawd o zid, yn tish, jejishigait, jedybadrwm stagwych, bwgseimwd ma giba, jeji, gwedsemeg, dygon wy gwedsemeg, sgwdig dy stadog ia. Nymwy wy batsin de matchti, dy twtig yn wtgia. Wysgiba, gost isnag syche, dy yn syttymch, dy yn syttymch, dygon o wed tygwych. Agwyd hyd y dod dy miw bwyt, hwy eich dim hi gwych, dan haw, te eisiau gabwstwng, hw dygon, esgwynde nistamt. Yn seiten mag, gwydyd dygon, ag agia, yn tisw je disgad, ag at je wy bwytaich gia, yn tisw je disgad. But nimiawn, byd, nimiawn wedi beth na dybych, te di, wy eich sych, te di wy eich dymg, dygon yn tis byd yma. Mwg byd yma, te wy psitsten ano, te wy gwgwedsten ano, dygon edrych ewyn syt dymg. Awgyn gawish, wyt yma dygod. Dim sgwmd noms, edrych edrych syniad yn tisw, gael sgwab da disigad. Nes, ymstand sgwmawd o dyd, wde, wywyd yma gael cheats, ebed dwgsgo, ebed wyd sigwych, eis nag sydo, edydw, tydi miwn syt dymg, cag miwn syt dymgge, edydw, tydi miw bwyt, tydi hwy eim sych, dande, seis, sigabwrs dymg dygon, nest, dande, tydi si miw bwyt hi sych gia, mwy mwgytiano, mae gesgwndech i ba, nistam, ew eisiau eim sych. Yn sgwmaw nest, Thomas, dan gaib siabod sych degwyw, jidis. Mamw bi, gwan jisw, gadisigat, wywes di beth o gwed stemw gia, jidi migach gwyw, di'n sgwmag yno, yn sgwmag ni gia, da we edi snag, jidi beth, mamw na dybych, ebet psit stymg, nes ebet psit hisoich, da neud eithym hi gwych, zegon. Mi gwech, sewen, yn dydaw. Sewi mi yw bwyeg, yn swe. Yn gwede.
Gwede. Nasgmaw, Jamaican Matthew Whabouchi, Jishe Gishwe Jimigwich. Who mingde when I Jim go, she said, and JG Midga, who Miss Nasidmin, who go Deputy Chief Thomas Jolly.
Wajegum said, good afternoon. Naskum Nodi Dukshinegut, Gen Nasquad Utmakan, Makat Shijak, did you bid me do you? Did you told Mano? That's the one you book same one. Did you Mamo Bedoyus? Did you bet call you? Uga, Whabouchi, mine. In June this summer, I got to Kamiganan, the Chikman. And my guy, over the summer, as Kamagajai goose break, I sweet. She bet bit snow when I and Nandam ya, the Tukshikia, the Parasa. Snehigan, down way Shaktadio, the way Shanagastade. Och stadio my new gap. August can even got me cagnot and then do say to not get I do not not get which seven not Dan Shackton him sneaking. In May 2013, the proponent submitted an environmental assessment. Social and environmental assessment for the project. This past summer, the document was being analyzed by various people with respect to the project. So it was not possible to do it any earlier, like over the summer, because it does take time to review the document and analyze it for its presentation by people who are reviewing the document. We prepared several documents for you. Hopefully they will be of assistance. There's also an additional document which you circulate that as well? There's various documents will hopefully give you more information.
And my God, spaghetti sneaking out. I would have seen a snake dead yagodana. Then I should not take no door. I need to have it snanned.
Information related to plan now.
Get hanging up, tag no, then I share my hair and they should you wouldn't get no plans on all. Next year, I got split in the Henry Matush. Mine hit to be that. Next year, then in you, his retribute adoi, you wait down and again, it's snabbits and open here, he's snadico, and that's the Adamson here. Next year. So, ich beschreibe noch, dann ist da Kinder mit das sehr gut minus not dead.
There were events that took place which are also the hit.
Sie tun magnisch so dat street je bet speaker mit dem sein ist not eco hinten Haus hegen. Bad maskete und dann Sie tun chada und stum magno da hier wird sich dem magno da go I need to beg should and see much going out next and see scotch mode. Getting them heat home. That's how it's done. I'm stand down and they should say to me, one of you is Hagen.
And in July 2010, 21st of July,
Oh man, they should actually shut him down and know that it's that shoots that son and nipped.
That was approved by a resolution from the People Council. And in
She took on him some Hagen and she shot there to Dagenod and then Janot.
when
Tad makar mnodž kinch mnodž mtadada. Oje mohimed enutsnavitsman. Nagash pshiswid. Situman in hito hito dagnakon. Oge absiktignad. Mema veda tongochu wawi den. Shashipshistu datsabinano. Mag gaudnik dat monotsmal. Weet het ze hebben bedacht min hoe na shitsteed dat den stuinen od. Zijn doen dan get zo dat je best met zo'n net ook zeer mooi jij met hem hier gegaan.
Keeping in mind
Dat is zeker.
the federal process is very close. It's most likely going to happen in
Special optum den no det var vi köpte det där då det förra beaches så oge med hur det nåt snövutsnanod.
how we would like to see our concerns being integrated with the project. So that they're reflected in the proceedings. So with that, I think it's we should proceed with the our presenters, and I'll hand it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Ik heb je zeggen, mijn misnatie doen de je met goed hoe hij hebben ze dan de Cree Regional Authority Environment Department. Geweest moet when is de mij dit zeggen, but de ook is misnatie door een is misnatie Alan Penn, Kelly LeBlanc. Perhaps maybe. You'll be next on the agenda, so you can proceed now if you want.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. First, I would like to thank the Chief, the Deputy Chief, and the Ben Council members for inviting the CRA Environment Department for attending this meeting, the committee members meeting on the Whabouchi Mine Project. My name is Kelly LeBlanc. I'm working for the CRA Environment Department. My office is in Montreal, and I am the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment Coordinator, which means that I review the documentation related to development project before a decision is taken on whether or not the project will proceed. I'm here with my colleague Alan Penn, who is a scientific advisor. Most of you probably know already Alan Penn. Today we will present general context about mining and information that we think will be useful for you to understand the Whabouchi project. So I will start with a presentation on mining in general, and then Alan will provide you information on lithium. I will finally present some information on the environmental and social impact assessment process. So we are here today to present you information about mining related to the Whabouchi project, but we are also here to respond to your questions and to listen. We really want to know what are your questions, opinions, and concerns related to the Whabouchi project, and we will welcome all your comments today. And before I start with my presentation, I would like to thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Thank you for your time and interest for being here. Are we ready? Can I start with my presentation? This presentation, well, our colleague Aurora Hernandez, she's our mining engineer working for the CRA. She was supposed to present you this presentation on mining. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. She couldn't be with us, so I will be presenting the Mining 101 presentation. But if you have any question, do not hesitate. You can ask your question along the presentation or after, and I will try to respond to your question, and my colleague Alan Penn definitely will have an answer for you. Well, hopefully. No pressure, Alan. So I'll start. So Mining 101. So what are minerals and metals? Minerals and metals are around us in our everyday life. We can find minerals and metals everywhere. In our toothpaste, there's calcium carbonate, which is a mineral that we can find in certain types of rock. We can find metals and minerals in all our electrical devices, such as our cell phone, televisions. Our cars and bicycles are made of iron. So there's really metals and minerals everywhere in our day-to-day lives. A study published some information about how in the United States every year a person uses about 38,000 pounds of new minerals for the things they use on their everyday basis. Stone, sand, gravel, cement are used to make roads, buildings, bridges, where iron is used to make cars, trucks, planes. There's salts in different kind of chemicals in highway de-icing, food and agriculture. So there's really plenty, like very various use of metals and minerals in our everyday life. Yeah, unfortunately the PowerPoint is a little bit small, but that's the best we could do today. I'm sorry about this. All mineral and metals come from rocks, and these rocks need to be mined and processed to extract the desired material. This material, we call this ore. In the case of the Whabouchi project, it's going to be lithium. The ore will be lithium. So a mine is the place where the rocks containing the minerals or the metals of value are extracted. I will present you today the mining cycle. That's even better, I think. Yeah. So there's 5 main steps of the mining cycle. And I will present you in more details these 5 steps. The first one is prospection and exploration. The second one is construction and development. The third one is extraction and operations. The fourth one is closure and restoration. And the fifth one is reclamation. So we'll go over this whole mining cycle. So the first step is exploration. Exploration is the identification of large areas of potential mineral resources. So it might take more than 8 years to find the right area where there's potential for mineral resources. And it seems that the success rate is about 1 to 10,000 explorations. So there's a lot of exploration companies that will never find they will never find enough potential to develop a mine. There's different stages. There's actually about 6 stages for exploration. So the first one is prospecting. So the company will look at maps, satellite images, try to find some mineral potential. And they will walk the territory. Once they think they have found something, they will claim the right to explore the area. Once they have claimed the right to explore the area, they will start some drilling and digging ditch to see the geology beneath the surface. So that's more advanced exploration. And finally, at the end of this first stage, they will conduct what we call a preliminary deposit evaluation or a preliminary feasibility study. This means that the proponent will do an evaluation of the proposed mine to determine whether the mineral resources can be mined economically. If there is no economical potential, the proponent will not pursue with further activities. They will stop there and they will try to find another area with more mineral potential so that a mine can be developed. So when the feasibility study is positive, then the environmental and social impact assessment starts. At this stage, there's always consultation with the communities that are undertaken by the proponent. Sometimes consultation are even conducted before by the proponent at the earlier stage during the period where they are doing exploration. And at the same time, usually there's an agreement being negotiated between the company and the community. I have a full presentation on environmental and social impact assessment that I will present you afterwards, but for the time being, the environmental and social impact assessment is the process of studying, describing, and assessing the positive and negative impacts of a project, in our case of the Whabouchi project, and present mitigation measures to protect the environment and the community. So both are very important, the biological and physical component, but as well the people. And at the same time, negotiations are undertaken. In the Whabouchi project case, it is called a Resource Development Partnership. That's the RDP. So a Resource Development Partnership, or a IBA, Impact and Benefit Agreement, provides economic opportunities and participation in environmental management. And after these two processes, after the environmental and social impact assessment process, and after the IBA or RDP, Resource Development Partnership, is signed, then the project can be approved and the construction phase starts. During constructions, there's a lot of activities going on. There's site preparation for constructing the areas holding the mining process, so all the mining infrastructures that need to be built, such as the mill, the waste disposal area, etc. There's also accommodation and offices that needs to be built on site. For the Whabouchi project, there will be no workers' camp. The workers will be lodged at the CCDC working camp. Or at near the Whabouchi. And during construction, most of the time, for every mine, there's roads, building, there's airstrip that needs to be built, power lines. For the Whabouchi project, again, no airstrip will be built because they will be using the Nimisco airport. And for the power line, they will need, of course, power on the site. Hydro-Quebec is planning to build a new power line, a 25 kilovolt power line for a distance of approximately 20 kilometers between the site and the Albanel substation. And so many different activities are undertaken during the construction phase, and there are many different contractors. So at this stage, it's very important that all contractors know and respect the environmental standards that needs to be applied, that are requested by the proponent, and they have to comply with various regulations applicable. So this is very important. Even if they only have temporary devices or infrastructure, they need to respect different regulations. The next step of the mining cycle, well, it is a circle, but it's a cycle, is the operation. So a mine in its operation phase needs to process is when the processing plant produces the desired product. So for the Whabouchi project, the mine will produce lithium concentrate. There's two types of mine. There's open pits and there's underground. Open pit is when the mine or deposit are close to the surface, and when the material is too far below the surface, then they have to go underground. So that's underground mining. For the Whabouchi project, that will be an open pit. Yep. During the operation phase, the main work areas are excavation. So excavation beneath the surface from which the ores and minerals are extracted. There's the processing plant. There's waste storage and supporting services. And that's a type of trucks that will be used at the Whabouchi site. So the first stage of the operation is that the rock will be crushed and ground. So the rock will be pulverized into very fine material. That's the first step, so to crush and grind the rock. So the proponent will use heavy equipment to process the rock. And the rock containing the ore will eventually be treated, and the other will be sent to a waste rock pile. So that's the material that has no economical value that will be sent to the waste rock pile. Once we have this rock containing the ore, this is a fine material, it will then pass to a flotation process. Next slide, please. So, the flotation process. So we now have this rock containing the ore, which is very kind of like a fine powder. And then it will be mixed with water and some chemicals. Then when air, you see there will be air is blown through this mixture, and mineral particles cling to the bubbles, which rise to form a froth at the surface. And the waste material will settle down. So the waste material will be at the bottom, and they will become what we call tailings. So that's, again, the waste material without any economic value. So the waste material will be at the bottom, and the ore will become the concentrate. But the concentrate, it will be mixed with chemicals and water. This water and these chemicals will have to be removed, so we have a clean concentrate. That will be the lithium concentrate for the Whabouchi project. And the water that was used, the water and the chemicals, will be recirculated into the system. So this water and the chemical will not be released to the environment. It will always be the same, circulated into the system. For the Whabouchi project, this system, this is like, I would say, the general system, like the general flotation process. But for the Whabouchi project, it's slightly different, only that the waste material will rise to the surface and will become the froth, and the ore, the lithium ore, what we are looking for, the concentrate, will settle down. So it's just the opposite, but the process is the same. Yeah. So for every type of mine, there's always a lot of waste rock. We say that for every ton of ore, 3 tons of waste rock are extracted. So the waste rock is what has no economic value. So all mines produce waste rock and tailings. Tailings are the fine grain waste product of concentration, again, without any economic value. And for the Whabouchi project, the waste rock and the tailing will be disposed in the same area. They will be together, disposed together. The biggest problem with this material is when the rock and tailing react with water and air, producing acid drainage, what we call mine acid drainage. But for the Whabouchi project, this is probably not an issue. The proponent don't think there will be acid mine drainage for this project. And when, for some mining, when there's acid mine drainage or leachate, there are regulations to control and to treat waste deposit to protect the environment. There's always a lot of water on site, and all industrial water must be treated and monitored before and for compliance before discharge to the environment. So all the water coming from the pit, from the waste rock pile, from just the water circulating on the site, will be collected on sedimentation pond. These sedimentation ponds are designed to hold suspended solid particles. And when necessary, these water will undergo chemical treatments to remove the contaminant before the discharge to the environment. So all water coming from the site will be treated before the discharge. In the case of the Whabouchi project, the water will be discharged into the creek, what they call the creek sea, and the mountain lake. That's the two, that's the two areas where the water, the treated water will be discharged. In Quebec, there is the Directive 019 that is used as a tool to analyze mining projects to protect the environment. So there's many criteria that are set for the final effluent, where the water, the industrial water, will be discharged. So they have to meet, the proponent, any proponent needs to meet some standards for surface water, underground water, noise, etc. So the Directive 019 requires an analysis of the final effluent at the end of the pipe, which means, at the end of the pipe, for arsenic, copper, iron, nickel, zinc, cyanide, hydrocarbon, suspended solid, and pH, but not for lithium. There is no criteria right now for lithium. And according to the proponent, they will only have to treat right now suspended solid. However, the Directive 19 does not request monitoring downstream the final effluent. So there's monitoring at the end of the pipe, but not downstream. But we usually ask for monitoring downstream to know the effect on the environment. During the operation phase, communities can participate through direct employment at the mine or by contract services with different companies. And communities can also participate through IBA or RDP, such as the one for the Nemaska Lithium project. the Resource Development Partnership through different provisions. So usually there's different committees set up within these agreements, and there's possibilities for doing environmental monitoring, for example. At the end of the mining cycle, well, it's the closure of the mine. Usually there's two main reasons for a mining closure. First one is that there's no more mineral, and the second one is that the value of the mineral has decreased, because as you probably know, in the mining industry there's a lot of fluctuation about the price of the ore. So when it's now no longer economical to operate, well, they close the mine. A closure plan of a mine is always required before the mining lease, and funds are needs to be provided to avoid abandoned sites, as it was back in the days, back in the 1940s and 50s. So now there's always a closure plan and funds that are requested by the provincial government to avoid abandoned mine. And it is the government of Quebec who decides when the area of the mine can be returned to the public domain after the closure of the site. Yeah. In a mine closure plan, there's always a description of what the proponent intends to do with all the infrastructure on the site, the roads, the airstrip, waste deposits. So they have to explain what they will do with all these infrastructures. So it's important at this stage to have community involvement to ensure that the future use of the site is planned to take into account Cree interest for the future. And at the closure phase, it's also important to have Cree involvement in the monitoring. And that's it for this first presentation about mining. Do you have any question about any aspect of this presentation? The water? The drinking water? If it's going to be possible to drink the water later after? I'm having a hard time. Do you understand, Ali? Well, you might have to respond. I'm sorry, I didn't hear well. Your question is about the water, but... You might have to respond.
I gọi tên này, nếu lấy cái bên ta nói là mấy mươi år rồi, ta mới chưa sao mới sao, ta quay chưa rồi.
I think I missed the translation. Can you? What was the question? Do you want to respond?
Well, as I will try to explain a bit later on, I don't think that you're going to see a problem. The company, the mineral that's being extracted is not the kind of mineral that would normally cause water quality problems. There'll be some suspended sediment, but the company has to make sure that it's settled out before water is discharged from the mine site, and the amount of water discharged into Mountain Lake will actually be very small. So I really don't think that you're going to see much change in the quality of the lake water in Mountain Lake, for example, if that's the main water body of concern to you. No, so I think it's for me, as I see it right now, it's a fairly safe project in that sense.
Is it on? Speaking of water.
Hello, go back later. I two questions no to go I iska imiega. We sugar get this in Gasiak, just Siega.
Okay, my name is Lillian Jolly Diamond, and I'm going to what Jacob was asking earlier. I have some questions regarding the quality of water as well. My first question has to do with use. What? Do I have to be on there? My first question is on, you said that they're going to mix chemicals with the water before it's discharged from the pipes into a creek. And my question is, what chemicals will be mixed with the water? And at what rate will that water be discharged daily? Like how much water of that water is going to be going into the creek, and where exactly is that creek? And where does the water from that creek flow to, I should say? Where does it flow to? Those are my questions when it comes to... and also, you were also talking about the extracts from the product. You said it would be very minimal, that they think that it will be, that the Whabouchi mine will be exempt to that, and I'm wondering how did they come to that conclusion? Like I've been reading the papers, and in many instances it says, we do not think that this will affect the Whabouchi mine. How did they come to those conclusions? That the impacts from other mines will not have the same impacts? Does it have to do with the land formation or the process? How are the impacts going to be exempted from this area?
First of all, I'm going to be making a presentation in a few minutes, and I think it contains some answers to your questions. But the simple statement I would make... Can you hear me clearly? Really?
Yes.
Okay. The simple answer to your question is that most of the chemical treatment of the ore that's taken out from the Whabouchi site is going to take place near Montreal, not up here at all. The process here that Kelly was describing basically is crushing to a fine powder, to a fine sand or small stones. They're mixed together and they're transported by truck. The crushing process uses water, but uses a minimal amount of other chemicals as part of this flotation process. So basically, it's a physical process of producing a fine granular material. That's transported to Montreal. Then it is roasted with sulfuric acid, and there's a complex series of chemical processes involved in producing compounds of lithium, which we didn't go into, but which we can explain. But all of this is happening at a town just west of Montreal, not up here at all. So I think I don't think you have to worry here about environmental issues associated with the chemical treatment of the ores. That's the simple answer to that question. Yeah.
Hello? No, I think you misunderstood my question. It's the water that's going to be discharged into the creek. You said earlier that water is going to be treated somehow so that there's no impact on the environment. So my question is, what chemicals will that water be treated with? What's the daily quantity of water that's going to be discharged into the creek? And the creek leads to where? That's my question.
Yeah. So for your first question, the chemical that will be used in the flotation process, the one that I explained, we asked the proponent because we didn't have this information. So probably tomorrow that would be a good idea to ask the proponent the same question, because he probably knows which chemical will be used during this flotation process. But the water in this flotation process will be always recirculated within it. This water will not be discharged. For the second question, the rate discharged daily in the mountain lake, the information is the impact statement, but I will have to go back to the statement, the study, and go to find the response, because I don't have it by heart. But after the meeting, I can go check with you, and you can also ask the proponent tomorrow what will be the daily discharge in the mountain lake. The Creek Sea is going to mountain lake. So Creek Sea is going to mountain lake, and then mountain lake to the Nemaska River, actually.
Oh, okay. Concerning the crushing and the materials, what other compounds are found within that? What it is that's required that you're taking out? That's one of the things that I'm wondering about me. Because a lot of this is going to be washed away into our lake, into our river. Whatever compounds, that powder is going to end up wherever it goes. It's going to be carried by that body of water. And whatever elements in there is going to have a negative effect on our environment. That's for sure. And there's no guarantee that nothing's going to happen. Because there's always, every day from step one, as they say, from first date when they start with an open pit mine, there's always something that's exposed from the ground that goes into the lake due to wash-offs or melting of the snow. And you're going to be doing this for 25 years. And the effect might be gradual, but over time it's going to show. Those are my worries, because that lake comes right down to this lake all the way to Old Nemaska. This is where the people that survive on the land and the fish. And I don't see that is right. And considering the fact, when I looked at the environment assessment on the one lithium mine that is located near Val-d'Or, 36 kilometers away, they already have effects on Lake Lochtsi, which is just the one already close by it. You're saying you're going to do tests right where you're only going to be putting the water in, but not downriver? I don't think that's right. You're not being accountable for the rest of wherever that body of water is taking all these minerals, whatever's floating into the lakes. I don't think that there's only one mineral in that, and those are the dangers that I'm worried about me. Because our kids swim in this lake. The future of other children will be swimming in this lake also. I think that's going to impact later on in the future. You're only looking at the present time for this moment and what it is you're giving us. You're not giving us anything on the longer view. And I don't find that fair for the people to suffer anymore. If the river is going to be damaged, this lake will also be damaged also. Because we know whatever residue is left into any water, particular water, is going to be carried downstream. Every little aspect of a small little animals will die from it. Because it's going to cover up a lot of parts of the body of the water, even what the animals survive from the bottom of the lake. Everything that might be coated with this lace is going to be transferred to any animal that fishes, from the ducks, from the fish, even any other big game animal that we require. And this is what I'm worried about. Huh? You're saying there's no effect. That mine over there, it's only been open for about 16 years, already there's already signs of impact on it.
Part of the answer to your observations is that the purpose of impact assessment, the process that Kelly was describing, is precisely to go through a detailed analysis of the minerals themselves and their chemical composition and the possible reaction with water and what may be released into solution in the water and get into the river systems downstream. The impact statement also deals with dust, with particles of sand and silt and their transport either on the site itself. There are air quality issues associated with that, but the purpose of the impact assessment is to study the mechanisms that are proposed to deal with these issues. So these are issues that need to be taken up with Nemaska Lithium, and you'll have scope for public hearings to raise these issues, and I think it's in early November in the case for the federal government, probably sometime in December or January with the provincial government, so that you're engaged in a process which is supposed to open up these issues for discussion. That's part of the answer to your question. I can provide you with some perspectives of my own, but I think that I wouldn't want to be trying to anticipate or substitute for the role of the assessment process and the role of the committees that are supposed to examine the evidence and look for the solutions to the issues solutions to the concerns that you're raising.
Other than pegmite, what else is found inside near that site that you're going to be digging up? Other than pegmite, what other compounds will be found in that open pit mine?
Too close to this. You're too close to the microphone.
Other than the pegmite, what other compounds will be found within that open pit? What other elements?
This I can go in. Whoops. Okay. This I can go into. I haven't made my own presentation yet, and I was going to try and address some of these questions then. But the lithium, I don't know what kind level of detail you would like this afternoon, but lithium is closely bound up with, chemically bound to what they call an aluminosilicate mineral called spodumene. It's very resistant. It's very stable. The skills of the mining engineer are the skills involved in crushing and extracting this particular mineral. It's about 1 or 2% by weight, maybe 3 or 4 in some cases, of these light-colored granites that you get in this region. Lithium itself is very widespread. It's not rare, but it is relatively unusual to find spodumene in high enough concentrations to justify its extraction as an economic mineral. What Nemaska Lithium is setting out to do is to take a fraction of the granites around here where spodumene is naturally concentrated and to basically quarry it, to open up essentially a rock quarry and to crush the rock up in order to release the grains of spodumene, which can then be transported out of the region for further chemical processing. So that's why it's a physical, as I see it myself, it's primarily a physical process rather than a chemical process. That doesn't mean to say that there aren't chemicals used, and it doesn't mean to say that there aren't potential water quality issues. But there's a big difference between a big chemical plant on one hand and a physical process which basically is aimed to crush the rock up in order to separate the grains that you're interested in order to transport them out of the region. I don't know whether that helps, but yeah.
Okay, I'll bring it up my issues in November then. As for this time being, I guess we'll see how we all work out with this.
Moi da wele ygöt semot ezega da wen chishmi got mine ludig di da bajum stagna no alen peng obla.
written out in a paper which I think has been circulated, but which is available for you to look at your leisure. But I think it may help you organize your thoughts for questions to Namaska Lithium. And the text here basically reflects our understanding of what are the basic issues generally associated with lithium as a metal, and with the Whabouchi project in particular. But one of the things I'd like to start off by saying is that in my experience, metals are very tough to translate into the Cree language. So that I'm sure that the translators are going to have a bit of difficulty trying to figure out the right term to use to describe lithium. What I was going to start off with by saying is that lithium is a metal, but you are familiar with iron, you're familiar with aluminium, zinc, and copper in your everyday lives. Those metals exist as in their own native form, as metals. The difference in the case of lithium, and it's like calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. These are common metals. They're in your body. They're part of the makeup of animals, birds, fish, and human beings. But they're always in chemical composition, in chemical combination with other elements. The most common example that you have in your daily lives, and at supper time this evening, is ordinary table salt, which is a compound with sodium. Sodium, if you have a piece of sodium as a native metal, it has to be in oil, cannot be exposed to the atmosphere, otherwise it'll catch fire. It's a very, very active and dangerous element on its own, but that's what's in regular common table salt. Well, it's the same situation with lithium. Lithium is a very light metal, and it doesn't exist in isolation on its own. If it did, it would react very quickly and be transformed into some other chemical compound. And that's the significance of the compounds which are found in the granites around the community of Namaska itself. Now, why is lithium significant? Well, it has proved to be very useful over the years in the manufacture of pottery and of glass. But in the last 30 or 40 years, it has acquired a very important role in electric power, in storage batteries. And what is really driving the interest in lithium now is the growing emphasis on energy storage in the form of batteries for cars, for aircraft, for everyday household appliances. So you're living in a period where batteries are becoming more and more important. And that's where the significance of lithium comes in. Okay. It's not new. I wanted to mention to you that lithium was being explored for in the Namaska region way back in the 1960s, roughly at the same time as the old post was closed. So that some of the lithium-bearing geological formations around here, like the Whabouchi Hill, were known in this region for about 50 or 60 years or so. But it is only now that we have circumstances which make it economically interesting to recover the lithium ores, the lithium-bearing ores, and process them for the manufacture of lithium compounds. And that's important to understand. I mean, there are a variety of other minor uses of lithium, but the one that I think strikes me as being most important here is the role of lithium in batteries and energy storage. And that's what's driving the interest in ESG. But the other thing I think I'd like to explain is that the industry for making batteries is very strongly concentrated in China. And for many years, China dominated the market for producing lithium compounds, and it purchased the lithium from other countries where the lithium could be obtained from lakes in very dry desert regions, where there was strong evaporation and where it was possible to concentrate lithium in the form of salts. Well, It turns out that this is a slow and relatively time-consuming process, and there's a growing interest in looking for geological formations which contain the mineral spodumene, and that's where the significance of Whabouchi lies. So Namaska is in an unusually favored position in this respect. There's a series of really strong geological formations. They're known as pegmatites. They're fractions of granite, which we can talk about in more detail if you like, but they're rocks which are not that rare in the central portion of USG. So that the Cree find themselves sitting on an ore which is relatively rare on a global scale, and where the James Bay Territory, or ESG, has a geographical advantage. So that's what we're seeing now here in the case of Whabouchi, but it's also happening with the Rose and with the Critical Elements Project that's under study right now in East Main Territory. There's also a property in Mississippi Territory, and there's a property down near Picogun, as you know, which started production earlier this year. So this is a new development in the Cree region, not because the mineral is being discovered for the first time, but because in the second decade of the 21st century, it's becoming economically interesting to build an industry in Canada based on this mineral. It's new in Canada. It's only now that we're seeing the beginnings of a mining industry based on lithium, based on spodumene. So everybody, including Nemaska Lithium itself, is on a learning curve. So you are on a learning curve as well, and so are we. We're working to understand the issues associated with this. But you have, as I see it, an interesting opportunity in front of you, and that's why it's worth close study. That's a few background observations about lithium itself. Maybe I can expand a little bit on what was being discussed just now about the processing of the spodumene ore. First of all, the mine itself. We haven't really talked very much about the mine. It's going to be about 1 kilometer long, about 300 meters wide, and at the end of 15 to 20 years of operation, about 150 meters deep. To give you a sense of what that means, it's more or less the whole is more or less the size of the community of Nemaska as it stood basically in the 1990s or around the year 2000. That's the order of magnitude. It's less than a mile long, but there's no doubt it's a deep hole, but it is not on the same scale as Troilus, which we'll hear about a bit later on. And it's a surface, it's an open pit mine, it's not an underground mine. So what that means in practice, and if we look at the experience of the Cree with the La Grande project and at Troilus, there are opportunities. This as an open pit operation. There are opportunities for the operators of shovels and trucks and drilling rigs, basically to operate the mine itself. As we're talking about a total manpower in the mill of the order of 100, 120 people in different shifts. So there are options there available for individuals who wish to operate equipment in the mine itself, hauling ore out of the pit. That's an important consideration because it's not as complex as an underground operation. It requires the skills and experience of truck operators and shovel operators, and there are plenty of them around already. There's plenty of Cree with that kind of experience already. So it's an interesting employment prospect on a time scale of 15 to 20 years. There's an equivalent number of positions available in the mill where the ore is processed. And that's where I'd just like to say that although crushing rocks sounds like a fairly uninteresting activity, there's in fact a lot of science goes into figuring out the best way of crushing rocks in such a way that you preserve the actual minerals that you're trying to extract economically. So so that the while we're talking, and while Nemaska Lithium is working in discussions with Nemaska, so there are technical discussions and laboratory experiments underway to figure out the best way of actually crushing the mineral and separating it out. So there are details that still are being worked out. Nemaska Lithium will probably be able to explain some of this week, but I suspect that other questions will become clearer over the next weeks and next months. As I said, it's a physical process of trying to figure out how to extract the spodumene in such a way that it can be prepared as a concentrate for transportation by truck away from Nemaska towards Chibougamau and then by rail to Quebec City and to Montreal. The other key thing that I think is important to understand is that most people who are familiar with mines will think of tailings, the substances, the waste material that Kelly was referring to, as materials which take the form of a fine silt or sandy material, which is usually deposited in a valley. In the past, in the Val d'Or region, it's deposited in lakes in the past. That's no longer current practice. That's no longer accepted environmental practice in the mining industry. So what is being proposed for the Whabouchi case is the building of a ridge, basically, which will reach a height of about 100 feet or 35 meters or so, a bit higher than the trees. It'll run over a length of about 1 kilometer or so, maybe 1.5 kilometers or so, and again, a few hundred meters wide. And that low ridge will contain both the coarse rocks obtained from the crushing of the ore, and Kelly referred to this ratio, this magic number of 3 to 1, basically, as being the ratio of waste rock to the economically valuable ore. We'd have to look at the actual numbers in more detail, but the point is that there is the rock that's dug out of the pit has to be put somewhere. Most of it has to be put somewhere in the region, and that will take the form of a long, low ridge, where you're combining coarse rock and fine rock in what is intended to be a stable mix, which will be revegetated and planted as the mine. It'll be planted. There'll be soil or organic material added to the waste pile as it's built up over the years, so that over time you have a new piece of the landscape developing, a low ridge which will be vegetated, and I'm sure that there'll be active possibilities for Nemaska to participate in deciding how that should be done, what kind of landscaping should be done with that pile, and how you, in effect, maintain some kind of control over the landscape that emerges as a result of the operation. What is important to understand is that the mine itself is a pit. It's a hole. It's like a large quarry. If you've flown over Montreal recently, you can see large quarries of the same kind of size as you're flying in towards Dorval. That's what you're going to see. That will be an important part of the landscape. It will slowly fill with water over many years, but for a long time you'll see the pit. And beside the pit there will be this long ridge, a longish ridge basically, which corresponds to the material taken out of the pit. So if I was looking at this from a Nemaska perspective, I think these are the major changes I would be looking at. I will be looking at the conservation of Mountain Lake. The questions were raised just now about water quality. I'm at least as concerned, or suggest that you should be at least as concerned about the long-term preservation of fish populations in that lake, so that there are issues about how best to conserve the fish in that lake, because it's been open to Hydro-Quebec workers. It's used by the community, and there will be questions about how do you regulate fishing by people working at the mine, whether they're Cree or whether they're non-Cree. So those are the kinds of issues that sort of stand out in my mind as being relatively important. Now, I hope that is a reasonable summary. Is that helpful?
Thank you, Mr. Payne. We precies break in 5 minutes. The good is going to snag on Deshta. 9 minutes, 5 minutes. Good day.